first, our top story tonight. A Supreme Court panel appointed to probe the sexual harassment charge against former Judge AK Ganguly has found him guilty but has let him off, saying that no further action can be taken. In a statement that was released this evening, the Chief Justice of India has said the committee is of the considered view that the statement of the intern prima facie discloses an act of unwelcome behavior. In brackets, it says unwelcome verbal or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature by Justice AK Ganguly with her in the room in the hotel on the 24th of December 2012. The Chief Justice goes on to say, considering the fact that the said intern was not an intern on the roll of the Supreme Court and that the concerned judge had already demitted office, no further follow-up action is required by this court. Well, my colleague A. Vaidyanathan joins us now from New Delhi. Vaidya, there's been so much scrutiny on this case and a lot of controversy has already erupted on what the panel has said in its findings. Interestingly, the Chief Justice's statement also goes on to say that they essentially set up this panel to probe these allegations because media reports had come out on what the intern had said, and it had said that a Supreme Court judge was accused of doing so, and they're also saying that they will not entertain any future representations against judges of the court because it can't be entertained by the administration of the court. What does that mean?
Nidhi, there are 2 points. One, the report clearly says since he's a retired judge, the Supreme Court doesn't have any jurisdiction to say anything. And also it says since media reported Supreme Court judge harassed an intern sexually. So it says if Supreme Court had come to know it's a retired judge, the committee would not have been set up at all. And the second important point, the full court means all the judges of the Supreme Court today met and decided that they will not entertain any petitions or representations of complaints against former judges. Why they said so? Suppose if they receive any sort of complaints by intern against any retired judges, they will not look into it. This is very important because sources told NDTV that a complaint by an intern is sent to the Chief Justice of sexual harassment by a retired judge who holds some important post in Delhi now. So they are making it very clear, saying that this complaint will not be looked into. One more important point, Nidhi, during the course of the deposement by Justice Ganguly, the panel, sources told NDTV, the panel asked Ganguly, saying that whether the meeting took place, he said yes. Then he denied all the allegations, but the panel told him, saying that we will ask the intern, you deny it in front of her. But Justice Ganguly backtracked, saying that he won't do it. So this made the panel saying that yes, prima facie, he is guilty of all this sexual harassment.
But Vaidya, you made a very important point there. You said that there is another complaint by another intern that has gone to the Supreme Court. What more can you tell us on that? That's very important.
Yes, exactly. An affidavit has been sent by the intern, but the details are not known. It's been kept very secret. But the affidavit as well as the complaint is with the Chief Justice. Now the Supreme Court making it very clear today, saying that they will not entertain any complaints against former judges, so that intern's complaint will not be looked into. That is the message.
All right, A. Vaidyanathan, thanks very much for that update there. So the question is, are there double standards when it comes to sexual harassment in the judiciary? Does the judiciary not follow its own Vishakha guidelines? Does it not? Should it not set a higher bar for itself when it comes to these issues? Joining us on the program tonight, we've got the Additional Solicitor General of India, Indira Jai Singh. Senior Supreme Court lawyer Pinaki Mishra is here in the studio with us. Also, Kavita Srivastav, activist, joins us tonight from Jaipur. Ms. Jai Singh, let me get your first reactions to the panel's findings, ma'am. What do you think of what they've said?
May I just read out to you what they've said? They've said the allegations have a direct bearing on the institution's reputation and credibility, and this is the reason why they are looking into it. I think it's a very significant statement, and what it means loud and clear is that any allegation of sexual harassment by a member of the judiciary does impact the reputation and the credibility of the institution. That, I think, is the right proposition. Secondly, let's read what they've said about this specific case. The committee is of the considered view, please emphasize the word considered view, that the statement of the lady in question, both written and oral, prima facie discloses an act, and here I'd like to emphasize, unwelcome behavior, unwelcome verbal and non-verbal conduct of a sexual nature by Justice retired AK Ganguly with her in her room in the Hotel Le Méridien on 24/12/2012 approximately between 8 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. For me, this is significant, and there cannot be a greater admonition of a former judge of the Supreme Court who is currently holding the position of chair of the West Bengal Human Rights Commission. So if you're asking me for my reaction, I think I'm very pleased with what the Supreme Court has done.
You're very pleased. But ma'am, let me also ask you though, that is there anything more the Supreme Court could have done? They are saying that since this is a retired judge, that the intern was not on the rolls of the Supreme Court, this is not something that they can act upon. Have they done the right thing? Could the Supreme Court have done more?
I think I need to put the record straight here. Let's be clear, even if he was a sitting judge, the Supreme Court could not have disciplined him in the sense of suspending him or removing him. That can only happen through an impeachment process which begins in Parliament, and this is for a sitting judge. Obviously, for a retired judge, even that is not possible. You have seen that the impeachment process stops even if it started when a judge retires or resigns. So what options is the Supreme Court left with in the case of a retired judge? The only option they are left with is to undertake introspection, a self-cleansing process, an administrative process, which they have done. And I'd like to put the record straight. The Supreme Court has not said no further action is required. What the exact words are, no further follow-up action is required.
By this court.
By this court. Now, it does not follow from that no further action is required by the police. It does not follow that other institutions are not required to respond. There are a variety of institutions which come into play in this situation, and each of them is expected to rise to the situation and respond.
But do you believe that the Supreme
opinion,
Court panel, ma'am, could have recommended the filing of an FIR, and maybe that the language could have been a little stronger? There's been some criticism already from many observers that to call it an act of unwelcome behavior is a bit like that ugly phrase of untoward incident that we heard in the Tehelka case.
To them, I would like to say that the words unwelcome verbal stroke non-verbal conduct of a sexual nature are lifted directly from the judgment of the Supreme Court in Vishaka. They are also taken from the Justice Verma Committee report. They are also taken from the newly introduced section 354A of the Indian Penal Code. Now, if people don't understand what is the meaning of the expression non-verbal conduct of a sexual nature, it is not for me to spell it out for them.
Okay, Pinaki Mishra, your first thoughts then. Indira Jai Singh has largely welcomed what the Supreme Court has done on this and the admonition, as she calls it, of the former judge in question here. But do you believe the language could have been stronger? Do you believe the panel could have at least said, we recommend that there should be an FIR? What do you think?
Look, I wouldn't call it just a simple admonition. I think it's a savage indictment. And mark you, it's a savage indictment by a panel which is very, very high powered. There are two future Chief Justices on this panel, Justice Dattu and Justice Lodha, and a lady judge of absolutely impeccable track record. So therefore, this panel, having used these words, they've used words in moderation, but I think if Justice Ganguly has the slightest vestige of dignity, I think he should step down immediately. There is no question that there is no need for this panel to have recommended an FIR or for that matter any further action. The panel was needed in the first place. You have to understand the perspective. Chief Justice of India was constrained to have put the panel in place in the first place because the blog itself was a little vague about whether this misconduct happened during the tenure of a sitting judge who recently retired or a judge who had indeed retired. So that's the problem. And that's the reason that the panel had to be brought in place in the first place. And that's why the clarification today that no further complaints about retired judges will be entertained, because really there is no teeth that the Supreme Court has queer retired judges, because the sitting judge, you can withdraw judicial work, and it's been done in the past in a particular case by the Chief Justice. He can actually withdraw judicial work, and that in itself is a very, very savage indictment. So, the way things are at the moment, there is no question.
But do you believe
clear course of conduct for Justice Ganguly?
That is one part of it.
Going
Justice
forward,
Ganguly
he
resigning.
must
But should
step
the
down
police
straight
take
away.
this up now and file an FIR?
There's no question. There is no question. You know, you have to see the blog itself. She's used the words violated in 2 places. And I think she's used the word both violated as well as sexual assault in 2 places in that blog. And I don't know what she said in the affidavit. She must have, you know, substantially amplified on that. These are words which are good enough for an FIR.
Ms. Jai Singh, just a quick word from you on that. Do you believe that the police need to act in this case suo moto the way we saw in the Tarun Tejpal case? Should they go ahead and file an FIR? As you said, other institutions have to respond now that the Supreme Court has done its bit.
I do believe so. I do believe the police must register an FIR. The information is now in the public domain. It has gone through one level of scrutiny by, as your panelist says, 2 incumbent Chief Justices, 1 lady judge. By the Supreme Court in its administrative capacity, yes, I do believe that the police must register an FIR now.
All right, Indra Jai Singh and Pinaki Mishra are very clear on what the next step should be. Mr. Tulsi, you were on this channel the other day saying that you didn't believe, based on these allegations, that Justice Ganguly had any reason to step down from the West Bengal Human Rights Commission. Today now that we know what the Supreme Court panel has said, is it time for him to go?
I don't know. But the point is that Pinaki using the expression savage indictment, unless he knows something more.
Read the words.
But the words are prima facie an act of unwelcome behavior.
And further.
I don't know.
Yes.
Further,
Indira, can I speak?
Does Mr. Tulsi believe
do I have
that
a right
the
to
word
speak?
sexual conduct is not an indictment? Will he please clarify whether the word sexual conduct of a verbal and non-verbal nature, is that not a sufficient indictment? What else does he consider an indictment?
Yes, Mr.
Well,
Tulsi.
the order which is available on the net, that's all that I have. It says that according to the 3-judge panel, there appears to be prima facie an act of unwelcome behavior.
No, that's not correct.
Now-
It's here, he's right, but it says it unwelcome verbal or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. That's the next line.
Very well.
So is that not an indictment?
Unwelcome, it may constitute an offence under 354, but we need to know more.
Good. I'm glad to hear.
It may
Mr.
not.
Tulsi
It
say
may
that
not
for a
constitute.
change.
Indira,
Yes.
let's not get carried
But
away.
Mr. Tulsi is
I have
not
a right
the
to
person
speak.
to decide. This will be decided by the police, not by Mr. Tulsi.
And not by you.
No.
Just have a little bit of patience.
All I'm saying is an FIR must
And
be
all that I am
registered, no
saying
more
is
than
that I am entitled to answer a question. Why are you jumping in each time?
No.
Do I not have a right to answer?
Do you not believe an FIR needs to be registered then in this case? Isn't
Not
that
suo moto. The lady is under no disability. The
Why not
lady
suo
is a
moto?
lawyer.
It happened
Why
in the
can't
Tarun
she?
Tejpal case.
The FIR is that the person aggrieved must make a complaint. Why does the
didn't happen
person
in the
aggrieved
Tehelka
not
case.
make a complaint to the police if she wants a police action? She is not under any disability. Why should the police register it suo moto? Suppose the police registers it suo moto and she does not support it.
Because under
police
the law
will
they
look
can,
foolish.
which is what they did in the Tehelka case, in which you actually have been a lawyer.
Which apparently was an act of vendetta because of her hostile government, who had a bone to pick with perhaps.
Well, that is your position as a lawyer in that case, which is a different matter, Mr. Tulsi. But the law does allow, Kavita Srivastav, let's come in here. The law does allow the police to act on this on its own, to take the next step. Why wait for the girl? Why wait for her to now come forward with a complaint? This is important. Do you not believe this is a strong indictment, Kavita?
Absolutely. Firstly, I want to express my outrage at what the Justice Ganguly did to that girl, and I really think everybody needs to rally round to first get him off that statutory post that he's on. He must just step down. Secondly, suo moto FIR and investigation has to begin. Not only is it in the law, but the recent Supreme Court judgment in the Lalita case, which came on 13th of November, It says that the police must suo motu begin preliminary investigations. So police can suo motu lodge, and I think we need to lodge. And I think this case clearly comes under, as said by earlier speakers, under section 354A of the Criminal Law Amendment, the new IPC section, where it is 1 year punishment. So an FIR should be lodged. It's a criminal case, and I think this indictment that the Supreme Court has made of this judge, we really supported. However, Supreme Court could have added a line. They're very good at giving guidelines, at giving guiding principles, stopping in a criminal case and going further. It could have gone further and said that they would like the Parliament of India to do something for judges. After all, judges are not extraordinary human beings. Even their own notification that they brought out is only for members of the bar. It is not for judges. The new Vishaka guidelines that they brought out, sexual harassment at workplace. So they could have gone further had they been fair.
Are you saying judges are not covered under that committee? Judges are not covered under that committee that was just set up last week? I think on the 14th.
No, they are not covered.
Retired
judges are not covered. So they should have said 2 lines they could have added.
No, so Indira Jay is saying on this issue of judges then not coming under their own Vishaka guidelines. Why shouldn't Supreme Court judges come under the ambit of those guidelines? This is a judgment that came back way back in 1997. You finally have a committee that's been set up last week after pressure in this case, and yet judges are not part of it, which is astounding.
Yeah. Let me answer that question. It is my understanding that the judges are not covered by those guidelines, and it is my understanding that those guidelines cover maybe women lawyers who are sexually harassed by their male colleagues in the Supreme Court, maybe women legal staff of the lawyers who are sexually harassed by their colleagues, and that category of persons. Yes, Supreme Court judges are not covered by that guideline. For the first time, we have some guidance now from the Supreme Court in the form of this report. What is the course of conduct to be followed if the sexual harassment takes place by a judge? Now, you have to distinguish between sitting judges and those who have retired. In the case of a sitting judge, the only remedy available to us as of now is an impeachment, and that begins in Parliament. It does not begin in the Supreme Court of India. 50 MPs have to sign a request for an impeachment. That's where the process begins. In the case of a retired judge, the Supreme Court now tells us through this report that they would not entertain applications in relation to retired Supreme Court judges. I think we have a problem over here. What the Supreme Court is telling us is exercise your rights under law. And these could be either approaching the police or the police taking suo motu cognizance. And very importantly, please remember, most retired judges occupy very important positions in official institutions, whether they are human rights commissions at the state level, whether they are tribunals,
absolutely,
whether they are other adjudicatory bodies, they're there. All over. I mean, a Supreme Court judge hardly ever retires in that sense of the word. Now, all these tribunals have removal procedures. For example, the West Bengal chair can be removed on a presidential reference. Now, we know that those options are also open, and it's a matter of exercising those remedies. Over and above this, I think some of us have raised the issue that we need to have a legally enforceable code of conduct for judges, and hopefully that code of conduct will include no sexual harassment.
Mr. Tulsi, can we argue with that? A legally enforceable code of conduct at the very least?
Not at all. I'm absolutely in favor of the Judicial Accountability Bill, which is pending before the Parliament. I think it is now before the Select Committee and may be taken up in the next session, in the current session. But there is no way, and I am not certain that this would be the position that the judges, the sitting judges would not be covered or would not be within the ambit of this committee that has been set up. After all, that's the whole purpose of this committee. I'm not certain, I do not know on what basis Indira is saying this, but if that is so,
Okay,
it's
I
sad.
can
They need to be under the committee for scrutinizing, because that is the whole purpose of Vishakha guidelines.
Exactly.
And that's the whole purpose of establishing a committee. If the judges are out, the lawyers are out, who is in? That means only the employees of the Supreme Court. That's not enough.
Well, that is what both Kavita and Indra Jai Singh are saying tonight. Pinaki, what do you think? How do you hold? It's not like sexual harassment by judges, learned judges, doesn't take place.
No, this is unexceptionable. I agree
Yeah.
with Ms. Tulsi. It's unexceptionable that judges have to be covered. There's no question at all. And if they are not, believe you me, they will see immediately to it that they are covered. But I just want to say one thing here. I think Justice Ganguly's continuance now is really drawing very unwelcome attention to the Supreme Court. He owes a lot to this court. He is everything today because of this very, very venerable institution, and he's doing it a great deal of disservice by this this pathetic defense of his that I'm a victim of a situation. I mean, I'm sorry, this is sounding pathetic. So I think he really must do the.
He doesn't have to make a defense to the whole nation.
But
Why?
shouldn't he resign now? Shouldn't he resign now, Mr. Tulsi?
Perception is very important in this case.
Public perception about a matter where the prospect of being prosecuted.
Look, he has no right over this.
Looms large.
Can he morally
Mr. Tulsi,
continue?
he has no
Mr.
right over this this position as the West Bengal Human Rights Commission chairman. There is no right. There is no right.
You don't know whether this accusation is true.
This is what the Chief Justice's statement says today. One moment, ma'am. The point
judges
is,
have believed her word.
So can he morally continue?
3 judges have believed her version and 3 eminent sitting judges.
Morality is everything.
Morality is to each one himself.
That's true.
I can't
has to
advise him on his morality.
He has to hold a mirror to his
Is it absolutely
conscience now.
impossible for Justice Ganguly to continue as Mr. Tulsi says morality is relative, it's subjective, he's not been prosecuted, he doesn't need to step down?
May I respond?
Yes.
May I respond?
Can I come in?
Yeah, 1 second, Kavita. Yes, Ms. Jai Singh.
Nidhi.
I think Mr. Tulsi's got it all wrong. The point is that he's not morally obliged to resign, he's legally obliged to resign. The law which applies to the judiciary and people who hold an office of a constitutional nature is very different from the law which applies to ordinary mortals. The law is the higher the position you hold a position of trust. You don't have a right to continue to occupy a post. It's a position which has been entrusted to you. And the law, public law, constitutional law is the higher the position you hold, the more your behavior is meant to be impeccable. And even the slightest suspicion is enough for us to say, step down. Okay? So it's not just a question of morality. I would put
it's
it
a question
as
of
a
legality.
law. Unfortunately, it is also a question of morality. He's doing a
But
great
Mr. Tulsi, you
injustice
still
to a
disagree
human
with that.
rights
Shouldn't
organization.
judges hold themselves to a higher standard, to a higher bar?
You see, they must hold
have
themselves
to.
to a much higher standard. There's no doubt about that. But when you are accused of having committed a criminal offense for which there is likelihood of a prosecution, then you have to think about your defense and your fair trial. The question really is that if a judge is not entitled to any special treatment in a matter like this, sexual harassment, no question, it is completely unrelated to your official duties. But he is at least a citizen of the country, and as a citizen, the constitutional rights which are conferred on every citizen are not deprived because he is an ex-judge. He still continues to be a citizen. He is entitled to a presumption of innocence. Can he really head the
Human Rights Commission?
He is entitled to a right of silence. And if he chooses that
Okay, Kavita wants to come in. You believe he has a right to continue to stay on, and that is part of his defense. Kavita, last word on this.
No way must he stay on, because after all, he is the chair of a human rights commission.
Exactly.
And if
He
he is
also has
somebody
human rights.
who has blatantly violated the human rights of a young girl, she says he's old enough to be my grandfather. How can any woman go to him? And I think he needs to step down. After all, 3 judges have looked into the matter and they say, prima facie, there is evidence that
There is allegation.
unwelcome behavior, his conduct was unwelcome. So I really think he needs, if he doesn't step down, I think we'll all campaign that he better step down, and also campaign legally whatever needs to be done. He has no right to stay.
Okay, Pinaki,
This is
quick last
really
word. I have to take a break after that. Yes, yes, ma'am. One second, Ms. Jessing.
Nidhi,
Yes.
this is
Nidhi,
precisely
I just
the
need
kind
to make
of
one comment,
Yeah,
please.
but yes, ma'am. One second.
precisely the kind of unwelcome glare that's going to continue every day that he's in office. And programs are bound to be publicizing this, saying does Supreme Court have double standards, do retired judges have double standards? This is the kind of thing, this is totally so unnecessary. If all he does is steps down, and then of course the law can quietly take its own course. But if he's adamantly going to stick to that position in the public glare, he's going to bring a lot of unwelcome attention to the Supreme Court.
Stepping down may also raise an inference of guilt. It's better to be removed than to
Nidhi,
step down.
could I please-
I
Better to be
wholly
removed.
disagree. Either you prosecute the person, or you say we don't prosecute. If he steps down, that meets the ends of justice.
He's
Indra
inviting
Jaising.
prosecution now. There's no question.
Indra
He's
Jaising,
inviting it.
would he be
He's
admitting
already-
guilt?
Yes.
Would he be admitting guilt if he
Just-
stepped down?
It'll raise.
Far from admitting guilt, he would rise in the estimation of people.
Yeah.
They would say he's done the right thing. But Nidhi, more importantly, I do wish to remind Justice Ganguly through your channel of a comment he himself made in relation to the late Mr. Vilas Rao Deshmukh. After Justice Ganguly had made comments against him in one of his judgments. On the sidelines of a seminar, what he said is this. He said, continuing in his present position is an undignified act. I would call it a shameless act. I'd like to ask
There
Justice
you go.
Ganguly, will he stand by his own standards? The standard which he set for the late Vilas Rao Deshmukh, will he accept that standard for himself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's a great note to end on. And if Justice Ganguly is
Nidhi,
watching this and
can
he's
I
listening
just-
to this,
can I
Kavita,
just
I have to
Nidhi,
leave it
one
at that
line.
tonight. I have to leave it at that tonight. But I understand the point that you're making. The point is, yes,
One line.
yes.
No. I'm just extending that if he remains in this high position, how can the police investigate him? How can the police go to him and talk to him in this
not?
high position? After all,
They're
he's sitting
investigating city
in a
ministers.
chair where he's checking the police for
okay.
their violations. He has to step down. The same police cannot examine him.
Well, Justice Ganguly has told various news agencies this evening that he hasn't seen the report of the Supreme Court panel just yet and will not comment. Let's see whether he does have something to say tomorrow and whether he does finally step down from this panel. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us on this important issue this evening.